last place we took the record to was Roulette Records. So the next morning, about 9 o'clock, all the labels that had said yes the day before called up and said, listen, Tom, we got to pass. I said, what do you mean you got to pass? I thought we had a deal. Morris Levy, the head of Roulette Records, he talks like this. He said, this is my record. In addition to being a functioning record company, was also a front for the Genovese crime family in New York.
Something could happen on this show. You never can tell.
Hi, everybody. I'm Pam from The Rock and Roll Show, and I'm here with my co-producer, Joe Farina, and we have a very special guest today you are going to really enjoy. Joe, how you doing?
I'm doing fine, Pam. Thank you very much. It's great to see you. Great to see everybody out there. Hope everybody is safe and healthy. And before we introduce our incredible guest tonight, just a few reminders. Please go to dickbiandifilm.com to learn more about the legendary DJ and the new documentary film that's going to be coming out. Please join our Facebook group, Dick Biondi Film Facebook group. Please like our YouTube channel as well. Please subscribe. There's a lot of great stuff on there.
And if you like what we're doing, like and share our page and ring that bell and subscribe to our channel.
Subscribe. That's right. You got it. Well, Pamela and I have been waiting for this for a long time, and it's really, truly an honor and a pleasure. There's no other way to describe Tommy James. He's a rock legend, and he is a rock icon, and we are so honored and just an absolute thrill for us to have Tommy James joining us tonight. Tommy, thank you so much for joining the Rock and Roll Show with Pam and Joe. How are you?
Well, thank you. I'm great. How are you guys? Everybody's safe and doing the right thing, right?
That's right.
We are, and we've been lucky so far, and we keep going. We do this show every week to connect with our audience, our Dick Biondi fans that love to keep up on Biandi and all the people that love Biandi. Sure. And you're one of them, I understand.
I'm one of them. Have for
you grew up with Dick Biandi, right?
Yeah, I grew up with Dick Biondi. It's the truth. And we've been friends for forever. But before I was a friend, I was a fan. And grew up on Chicago radio. And I lived in a little town around the other side of the lake called Niles, Michigan, just north of South Bend. And, that's where I started playing guitar. That's where I started my first band. That's where it all started for me. And Dick Biondi was a big part of my early musical life. And that's no kidding. It wasn't a hit until Biondi said it was.
That's right.
You got it.
That's right. And listening to Dick Biondi on WLS back in the day, I didn't have that opportunity, but I imagine your generation, the baby boomers, people who grew up with Dick Biondi and listened to his radio show on WLS. That must have been just a powerful, incredible experience.
Well, the amazing thing is the whole WLS experience. He was one of the originals. I remember when WLS started as a top 40 radio station. It was like a farm station before that. The price of oats and stuff. And then they went top 40 and just took over. And Dick Biondi was one of the original. It's like being one of the original 7 astronauts. Being one of the 7 DJs on WLS. And he had that great slot between 9 and midnight. And of course, that was the bewitching hour. That's when the rock and roll made its bones.
That's right. And just going off of that, can you tell us a little bit more about your earliest musical influences? Can you tell us a little bit on how that started for you?
Well, sure. Well, when I was a little kid, I mean, a tiny little kid, I had my ear in a speaker of one kind or another my whole life. And when I was 4 years old, my grandfather bought me a ukulele. And my mom had already bought me records and and a record player. And she'd buy me the pop records of the day along with kiddie records. So I was listening to the Three Billy Goats Gruff and Perry Como, uh, that was my first experience. And then once I got the ukulele, I started playing what was on the radio and singing. And when I was 9 years old, I got my first guitar. I saw Elvis on TV for the first time, and the ukulele went out the window. And I begged my mom to get me a guitar, which she did. And it was an acoustic guitar, and I played that for a year. And then I got an electric guitar the next year when I was 11, or when I was 10. We were called the Tornadoes, and I'll never forget when I played one of our first songs was a record that we had learned called Underwater by the Frogmen. And I remember people coming up to me and saying, "Hey, you guys sound just like the record." And I said, "Thanks," until I realized, that we were just as lousy as the record was. That's what they really meant. So anyway, I had my first record deal when I was 14. I worked in a record shop after school selling records, and one of the distributors who serviced the record shop had a little recording studio in Michigan and asked if I would come. They put out records. They actually pressed them up and would sell them locally. And so we did that. And so that was cool. And we got in jukeboxes and made a little name for ourselves. But then the record died, of course. And then about a year and a half later, another fella, a disc jockey, comes in the record shop, and he's starting a little label called Snap Records, and asked if we would be on it. He was a disc jockey at WNIL in Niles, and we would record in the radio studio, and we did. And that was one of the first 4 sides that I recorded for him was Hanky Panky, the song that ended up being our first hit record. And so anyway, the record came out, and again, we had no distribution, so it died. And I graduated from high school in '65, and I took my band on the road. And in early '66, right in the middle of my 2 weeks playing this dumpy little club in Janesville, Wisconsin, the guy went belly up for not paying his taxes, and we got sent home. But that's how the good Lord works, because went home feeling like a real loser. But if I hadn't have been home, I would have never got the telephone call that changed my life. It's several people from Pittsburgh, including disc jockey, called me up at my home, tracked me down, and told me that this record I had recorded 2 years before, Hanky Panky, was sitting at #1 in the city of Pittsburgh.
That's amazing.
And what had happened is they had a little underground record business in Pittsburgh, and they bootlegged the record, and they'd sell the stuff locally, and the thing just kind of exploded out of Pittsburgh. Only in America. That's the only place this could happen. So I went to Pittsburgh, and sure enough, outside of Pittsburgh, I'm nobody. And as soon as I cross the city limits, I have the #1 record. I'm a rock star.
Oh my God.
So that's how it happened. And I just totally out of the blue. And a week later, we take the record I picked up a group in Pittsburgh that became the new Shondells. And by the way, we had changed our name when we did Hanky Panky from the Tornadoes to the Shondells. And so I needed a group of Shondells real fast, and picked them up in Pittsburgh. And a week later, we're in New York selling the master. This would have been the spring of '66, and ended up selling the record through Roulette Records. We'd had a yes from everybody, from Columbia, from Epic, from RCA, from Kama Sutra. So at any rate, the last place we took the record to was Roulette Records, thinking that, going to be with CBS or one of the corporate labels. It was going to be great. So the next morning, about 9 o'clock, all the labels that had said yes the day before called up and said, "Listen, Tom, we got to pass." I said, "What do you mean you got to pass? I thought we had a deal." And finally, Jerry Wexler at Atlantic told me the truth, that Morris Levy, the head of Roulette Records, he called up and he scared the rest of them. And literally scared the rest of them. He talks like this. He says, "This is my record. Back off." And they did. And of course, we gradually learned that, why Roulette was so scary. It was because Roulette, in addition to being a functioning record company, was also a front for the Genovese crime family in New York. And so we learned this incrementally after we had signed with Roulette. And so that is, we'll get to later, but that is the essence of our book and the movie that's coming out. Anyway, so Roulette takes the record to #1 all over the world.
At least they did good for you.
They did.
Yeah,
They did. Yes.
We ended up with selling about 110 million records on Roulette, and had 23 gold singles and 9 platinum albums. So
Beautiful.
I guess that's the place we should have gone. It was a little scary, but it was. I can tell you that if we had gone with CBS or one of the corporate labels, I can tell you that we would have probably been lucky to have been a one-hit wonder, especially with a record like Hanky Panky. We would have been turned over to an in-house A&R man, and that's probably the last time anybody would have ever heard from us. And of course, we would have had so much competition as well. At Roulette, they actually needed us because they hadn't had a hit in 3 years. So we got the best of whatever they had. Well, anyway, that's how it happened. That'll teach you to ask me a question like that. How'd you get started, Tom? Sounds simple, doesn't it?
Now, when you were finding out that about Roulette Records and their connections to the Genovese crime family, how did that affect you personally, professionally? Were you able to keep your focus, write and record those hit songs? And what were some of the advantages of being at Roulette Records? You mentioned a few already, but it sounds like maybe they gave you a little bit more artistic or creative freedom to record your songs or give you more studio time or what have you.
Well, you see this bruise right here? No, the way it affected me basically was we didn't know at first. We didn't understand at first who we were involved with. We just knew they'd had a lot of hits. Of course, they had back in the 50s, Jimmy Rogers and Joey D and the Starlighters, and in the early 60s, and Lou Christie and the Essex, and just a whole slew of great hit singles. And they did such a great job with us. I got a chance, first of all, to learn my craft, something that would have never happened at a street level.
Wow.
And I learned the industry, learn writing, producing, recording, distribution, marketing, album design, everything. So that would have never happened anywhere else. But the downside was that crime doesn't pay. We're still waiting for our royalties. Of course, we were making money from all kinds of other things, touring and BMI and and those kind of things, writing. But mechanical royalties for the records were just not going to happen. And so we had to constantly ask ourselves, you know, do we want to try to get out of this thing and maybe take our lives in our hands? Or do we want to stick it out? And because we were having such amazing success on Roulette, just everything we put out charted, and a lot of top fives and number ones and a lot of gold records. So I think we made the right decision. I will say that we learned incrementally what was going on. We would see people that we saw on TV. We'd meet somebody up in Morris's office, and a week later we'd see him, being taken out in handcuffs from a warehouse in New Jersey, and say, "Isn't that the guy we just met up in Warsaw?" And it would be. And of course, they used Roulette basically as a social club, and it was, we had to pretend we didn't see things we saw, and stuff like that. So it got very scary a few times.
And that's all in your book, right?
It is. The book is called Me, the Mob, and the Music. When we finished the book, it got gobbled up immediately, thank God, by Scribner from Simon and Schuster, right? And so, it instantly came out, and we immediately started getting calls for the movie rights and for the Broadway rights, which is going to happen after the film. But what I'm saying is that our producer is Barbara DeFina, who produced Goodfellas, and she produced Casino and The Color of Money, and Hugo a couple of years ago with Martin Scorsese, and just a string of great films. And we're very honored that she's going to be producing the film. The director is Kathleen Marshall, and she's brilliant and really a great director. Matthew Stone has done the screenplay, and it's very interesting to see how screenplays are put together, because they have to do with scenes visually and dialogue what the writer does, with a narrative and with telling the story in a book. So it's a very different animal, and I have a lot of respect for these guys. So they are doing, the music is being prepared. I'm going to be involved in production, and but as you know, shooting has stopped right now. They're casting the movie now as we speak. That's going to go ahead, but they can't shoot until the virus backs off, and people can get together.
That's magnificent news, Tommy, about the film, and well deserved. And
well, thank you.
You connected with you found the right people, and it sounds like those people are line up with your story and your vision of how you want it to be, and that's really important. And
thank you. Well, we got a wonderful team.
That's great, and that's so important.
I'm enjoying watching this all come together.
That's great.
So
we're excited.
The next couple of years are going to be fun.
That sounds like a really great film, and I can't wait to see it.
Me too. I hope we all live long enough to see the damn.
Tommy, we wanted to ask you about a couple of, your hit songs. Oh my gosh. We can go on forever. They're so fantastic.
Sure.
The first one is Crimson and Clover. And the reason we want to ask about that first, it's a dynamite song, but it seemed like, in comparison to your previous hit songs, it seems like at the time the band was going in a different direction, and sonically and sound-wise is much different than, say, a Hanky Panky or I Think We're Alone Now. Can you tell us a little bit little bit more background on Crimson and Clover.
Sure. Well, you know, we were so fortunate to have the attention of the public so that we could evolve. You know, we were very lucky to have a career that was long enough so that we could go from one step to the other, and not get knot-holed with the first records that we had. Crimson and Clover turned out to be, next to Hanky Panky, probably the most important record we had, and I'll tell you why. It gave us the second half of our career, and it allowed us to go from top 40 AM singles to progressive FM radio and sell album rock, which is something Roulette had never really done before. And I can't think of another record that would have allowed us to make that pivot other than Crimson and Clover. It just happened to be the right song, the right record at the right time. And so we were very blessed to have that one at that moment. I'll tell you what was fascinating, though, and I tell the story in the book about, we had been asked by the Vice President, Hubert Humphrey, who was running for president at that moment. We had his office called Roulette and asked if we would come out on the road with him. It's the first time that a politician and a rock act ever teamed up, and we were to meet him after the convention, and meet him in, I think it was West Virginia. So it just so happened that we were, when we left on that, I'll call it a tour, but it really was a campaign. We ended up doing the whole campaign with him. There was this tremendous extinction of singles acts right at that moment. We went out on the road in August of '68, and the acts were the Rascals, us, the Association, the Buckinghams, I go on and on, all singles acts. We came back 90 days later. It was Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Led Zeppelin, Crosby, Stills, and Nash, Neil Young, all album acts. Joe Cocker, all album acts. And it happened just that fast. In 90 days, the whole industry turned upside down. And we were so lucky to be working on Crimson and Clover at that exact moment. And that's right when it really mattered. As a matter of fact, Hubert Humphrey wrote the liner notes to the album. That gave us the second half of our career, and honestly, our sound changed drastically. I started producing the group at that moment myself, and so we weren't using the group plus studio musicians or anything like that. And I didn't have any other producers. I was producing, and that was my responsibility. And that was basically the first record I produced with the Shondells. And it turned out to be the biggest single we ever had. We did 5.5 million singles right at that moment in early '69. And it has sold approximately 20 million units, being on other albums and catalog albums and over worldwide over the course of the years. And that really was a magical record. And then of course it made way for Crystal Blue Persuasion and Sweet Cherry Wine and Dragon Line and all the others. So that was a terribly important record for us. I told you not to ask me those
That's
questions.
okay. Well, I mean, the catalog of music that you recorded is just unbelievable, and I tell this to all the guests that come on here. I learned about your music and became a fan of your music through Dick Biondi, and
Wow,
I
yeah.
listened to Dick. I'm 48 years old, so when Dick came back to Chicago in the early '80s, he worked at an oldie station called WGMK, and that's how I became a fan of Dick Biondi, and that's how I became a fan of your music. And I'm grateful, really, really grateful for that, because the music that you've blessed this world with is just absolutely
Well, thank you.
dynamite.
That's very nice of you. Those are kind words. I appreciate that.
Absolutely, you got
And
it. You
Tommy,
got
I
it.
got to tell you, I grew up on your music, so I remember
You're
all
both
your
kids.
hits.
You're
No,
both kids. Come on.
I listen. I met Dick back in the early '60s when he first came to Chicago. I met him in 1961, and I've known him my whole life too, like you. And so, yeah, I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, out west in Villa Park, and I was a huge fan. And I do remember the Prairie Farmer. I was tuning into the Prairie Farmer when all of a sudden it went rock and roll, and I was like,
Yep.
"Whoa!" So yeah, I remember I was right there with you. I'm about your age, and so
You're 106 too. Is that right?
your music has been a part of my life all along. So
That's
thank you,
great.
thank you for
Thank you.
that.
That's
Yeah, it's
great.
wonderful.
And Pam, you wanted to ask Tommy something
Yeah,
about
about your
the
songwriting.
songwriting.
Yeah, can you talk about your approach to songwriting?
Sure. Well, it can be anything. When you write songs for a living, you're always on the lookout for interesting word patterns or titles, or in my case, because I play several instruments, I'm like always looking for. It can come to me like with a chord progression, with a guitar riff that I happen to like, with a tempo or a groove that moves me, or it can be a title. I've written songs from every vantage point. Um, I love to just sit down and kind of feel my mood and see what comes into my head, because a lot of times titles will come into my head, or the opening lines to a song, and I just kind of follow my nose and see where it takes me. And so that can, or I can hear somebody else. I can hear a guitar player play some Crystal Blue Persuasion, for example. It's, Eddie Grape. I had this poem that was read to me, and I had this title, Crystal Persuasion, and from the guy's poem, which I immediately stole. And then we sat down in a hotel room, and Eddie Gray, our guitar player with Shondells, started playing that little guitar. And I'm like, what's that? And he played it again, and that became the whole song. So you know that's going to come. You can see a billboard with a, advertising something, and it'll be, the words to a song or a title. You never know where it's going to come from. That's what I love about songwriting. Anything can happen.
That's great.
Do you have a favorite song that you wrote that you're particularly proud of, or touches you in a meaningful way?
Of the hits, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's a tough one. I really, there's a couple of them. I guess I have to say Crystal Blue Persuasion, just because of what it reminds me of, that magic summer of 1969 when we went to the moon and Woodstock and all the New York teams won, and the Mets won and the Jets won, and being in New York, that's all I thought.
That's great.
But Crystal Blue Persuasion was a very different kind of a record for us,
Yeah, it
and
was.
took us in a different direction. And but it was one of the hardest records I ever made. Doesn't sound like it, but it was. When we made the record, we had completely overproduced it. we had guitars, we had a full set of drums, I had keyboards, and we looked at each other and said, you know, that's not the song we wrote. And so we spent the next 3-4 weeks unproducing the record, pulling stuff out until there was nothing but a little guitar riff and a flamenco guitar and a little trickle of an organ. And the record will tell you what it wants to be, you know.
Now that is really interesting to hear that. You know, I think anybody that wants to approach songwriting would find that line that you just said there pretty interesting. You know, let the record speak, let the song speak, listen. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That's
You
really
can't be,
good.
and in order to do that, you can't be scared of the record. A lot of people, when they make records, are scared of the record. You say, "Oh, what does that sound like? Does that sound complete?" You know, you gotta you can't be scared of the record as you're making.
A couple more things we'd like to talk to you about. The first is the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. How you are not in there is mind-boggling. I mean, is that?
It's easy.
You know,
It's easy to not be in there.
You know, you should be in there. And I mean, how important of an accolade is that for you? And I mean, is that something? I'm sure that's something you've thought about. But when you look at the list of artists that are in there already, and the fact that Tommy James and the Shondells have been omitted, is just, I just can't figure that out.
I'll say two things. Number one is, I think I've gotten more mileage by people telling me that you ought to be in the Hall of Fame than if we had been. You know, it's good to be the underdog. I mean, it really is.
Sure.
But the other thing is that, you know, when I want it to happen, when the movie comes out.
Ooh.
I would love to have that as a 1-2 punch, and I've always thought there was something really kind of I don't know, unseemly about artists who, you know, complain because they're not in the Hall of Fame. When it's our turn, we'll go.
Good attitude.
It's a great attitude. It's a great way to look at it. And also, tell our audience about this amazing XM radio show that you host. Tell us more about that.
Sure. Well, it'll be 3 years in February. They came to me and asked me if I would do the show on Sirius. We're talking about doing my own show on Sirius XM. And I almost backed out because, you know, it had never occurred to me. You know, I've always been on the other side of the microphone, and it's one thing to get asked questions like you're doing and come up with snappy answers and everybody thinks you're smart. It's another thing to be on the radio and go, you know, that's a whole other deal.
I can identify with that, Tommy.
Yeah. Well, so anyway, I did it, and I'm having a ball with this. It's on every Sunday from 5 to 8 Eastern time. It's called Getting Together, and the philosophy of the show basically is that in addition to the hits, we also play. There was so much music recorded, released in the continental United States in the 1960s that you wouldn't believe. So much music that never got heard, never got on the radio because there wasn't enough room for it, never got on the charts because there was, you know, something like 800 records were released every week in the continental United States, and 5 records made the national chart. And during the 1960s, and it was just such an amazing time. And so we think a lot of this stuff, we like to research it, and a lot of this stuff, we love playing new old records, you know, records that you haven't heard that should have been hits and weren't. So we love to go through that. We also love to play rarities. There's a lot of songs, for example, by big artists, you know, follow-ups to big singles that bombed. You wouldn't believe it. How many artists, you know, that had, you know, top 10 records, put out another record and just nothing. So a lot of that stuff. In addition to the hits, we like to play rarities and interesting songs and stories about the music. There's a great story behind almost every single hit record of the 1960s. Just like my first record, just like Hanky Panky. You wouldn't believe, like Paul Revere and the Raiders, how they ended up getting from Idaho to Atlantic Records. It's unbelievable stories. And there's so many hit records like that because everybody in every city was making records back then. And it's not like today at all. So anyway, we love to play new old records.
That's great.
That's great, really.
Yeah.
And it's good that, it seems to me that you have done it all. I mean, you write, you play all these instruments, you've produced, you've done record jackets. I mean, you've done everything. Now you're doing the radio show. I think it's great. You keep on reinventing.
So thank you. I have been so blessed and so lucky to be in this business and get a chance to do this. So this is a business that maybe gives you 2 or 3 years if you're lucky. We've been doing it for 54 years in the major leagues, and
That's right.
I can't believe it. I really can't, and I'm just thankful to still be doing this. We're still recording. We have our own label now, and so we can put music out when we want to. We just put an album out last year called Alive, and it was the first studio album I've done in 10 years. And both of the singles from the album went top 20 on Billboard on the adult contemporary charts. I am adult, and I am contemporary, so we were on the adult contemporary chart. So we did 2 songs, one of them brand new, called So Beautiful, and the other was this new version of I Think We're Alone Now that's slow and acoustic, that's going to be in the movie. It's closing credits in the movie. And we put it out as a single, went top 20. And then Green Day this year, Billy Joe Armstrong in his bedroom recorded I Think We're Alone Now, and Warner Brothers put it out and it went top 10. So I Think We're Alone Now was a top 10 record this year. So
Wow.
We've had over 300 cover versions of our songs done from Prince to
the longevity says it all.
Absolutely.
You're a very talented person. You've got a great voice. Even now, your voice is still remarkable. You just have a lot of talent. So that's why you're still here. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today. And where can people get in touch with you, Tommy?
Well, our website is just TommyJames.com. We're on Facebook. It's Tommy James and the Shondells. We're on Twitter, Instagram. We're all over social media, and we're going to be, we're still touring every year, except for this year, of course. That'll start up again next year. And so as long as I'm healthy enough to do it, we're going to keep doing it.
Wonderful.
Sounds good to me. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Thanks, guys, so much.
Yeah, and before I depart, Tommy, thank you again. And honestly, when I say this, thank you for the songs and the talent that you've blessed us with over these years. And congratulations on the success of the book, and as well as the movie plans. It sounds just absolutely fantastic. We can't wait.
Thank you.
And really an honor and a pleasure for us to have you on our show. Thank you very much. And
great talking with you guys. You asked all the right questions. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And Pamela, thank you. And before I depart, stay healthy, stay safe. Have a great Thanksgiving. DickBiondiFilm.com. Be sure to like the Dick Biondi Film Facebook page and join the Dick Biondi Film Facebook group and subscribe to the Dick Biondi Film YouTube channel. All right, everybody. Joe Farina.
Thank you, Joe.
Signing out. Thank you. Thanks, Pam. Thanks, Tommy. Appreciate it.
God
buddy.
bless. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in to our show. Be safe and have a very happy Thanksgiving. Tommy, thanks again for being here with us.
God bless. Thank you.